Hi, my name is Stephen. This is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology, episode number 3. Today, as usual, we're going to be looking at the Moon Void of Course calendar for next week. We'll examine the gold market astro timing dates, and then we'll get into some detail on President Trump's astrology transits, and finally in the news we'll look at Iran's current astrology relative to John Bolton. Okay, the Void of Course Moon calendar. What is it? Why is it important? The Void of Course Moon is the name given to the period of time that it takes for the moon to fully transition from one astrological sign to another. This occurs every 2.5 days, and sometimes it takes place just within minutes, and sometimes it takes hours, even a whole day to complete. Now, why would it be worthwhile to be aware of these transition times and to maybe put them in your calendar? Well, I have some key words that fit my experience, and that is during a Void of Course Moon, there's a sense of disengagement. There's a feeling of kind of shifting into neutral. And down here are some other descriptions of what tendencies often occur during what I call a VC moon. People would rather be playing, resting, taking it easy, heading for the beach. And because of this shift in mood, a lot of what we're trying to accomplish during that day often becomes more difficult. And sometimes our plans just completely go off the rails. In addition, traditionally in astrology, starting something new during a VC period is usually a bad idea because it creates unexpected and often unwanted results down the line in the future. So it is recommended to avoid big decisions, maybe reschedule important business meetings, try to do more maintenance work, secondary activities if this VC period takes place right in the middle of the work week. Additionally, I try not to spend a lot of money. I wouldn't buy a new car during a Void of Course Moon period. I wouldn't start a major new phase in my life. A classic example would be someone getting married during a Void of Course. So when are they happening next week? Well, we have one on Tuesday, May 28th, and it is occurring up to 11:32 a.m. So all morning, basically, on Tuesday, May 28th, we have a Void of Course Moon. And then on Thursday, May 30th, we have a longer one from 8:08 a.m. to 9:43 p.m., essentially all day. On Saturday, if you're taking it easy, if it's your day off, then no problem. You're going to feel like taking a day off. However, if you're working on June 1st from 3:52 p.m. to 4:48 in the morning on Sunday, the moon will be void. It's important to keep in mind that all these times are Pacific Daylight Times, and you need to make the conversion if you live on the East Coast or wherever. So just test this out yourself, judge for yourself. But in my life, after doing astrology for many, many years and tracking this closely for the last 15 years, I think it's important to note in your calendar. Okay, here is the price chart of gold. We're using a proxy of GLD, and many of these lines on this chart are just related to traditional technical analysis. We have trend lines like this. These green lines are trend lines. These blue lines are support and resistance areas. Like it came down twice to this region right here, and then it's broken through. And we can see price chart patterns being formed. This very well could be a kind of a bullish declining wedge is what they call this. However, all these vertical lines are from my research into the astrology of the gold market. And to me, they indicate when there could be extra price movement beginning on those dates. Okay, and you can maybe take a screenshot of this or something and look at this more closely at a later time. But the advantage here with studying astrology is I can see ahead of time when there will likely be strong price movements, and I can combine that information with the more traditional technical indicators that I'm also looking at. And here the next strong energy date is May 28th, and actually it's a very strong one, and there's several. So on my watch list, I'm looking at gold between May 27th and June 5th. And we'll see what happens. But gold has been trading down. It's coming down to fairly close to a support area. I think this chart was done on, when was this done? Monday, let me double check. It was done on Monday, May 20th. Okay. Today is the 21st. So let's move on. Donald Trump, he has multiple transits taking place in his chart, just like everyone does. However, he had some very strong, important ones. He has Pluto and Saturn, which are together in the sky right now, very close proximity, transiting in the sky right now. Their location is opposite his natal Saturn, Venus. Jupiter transit is conjunct his moon and opposite his sun. Mars is soon to transit his Mercury and his ascendant later this summer. And I think it's important to look at the next Mars transit dates for him, which will be May 27th to the 30th. Now let's go into more detail and look at his chart with this. Here is the Donald's chart. It's in this inner ring right here. And the current position of the planets they're located in this outer ring. Let's go through this kind of in detail. I can be more succinct if I read this. Okay, the primary transit for President Trump is that he has Pluto opposite his Venus Saturn. So looking at this outer ring right here, we have Pluto, Saturn, opposite his natal Saturn, Venus are conjunct over here. And this is a long transit. It's been going on for a year. It'll definitely go on, maybe for another year, another 9 months. This conjunction, let me talk about this for a second, is been in his natal chart, so it's part of his character. This conjunction, Saturn-Venus, has been problematic for him throughout his life. It represents someone who was pressed to become financially ambitious. And I see real estate, which is related to Saturn, actually a very fitting profession for him. Also, this is someone who has issues dealing with others in a gracious manner. In other words, he can at times be crude, tactless, and blunt. So that's kind of natally in his character. Now he has Pluto transiting this energy. And it's occurring now, and these tendencies that he has are exacerbated, and a sense of being unappreciated or unwanted is accented. However, in Trump's context, unlike the average person, this Pluto transit can also represent the establishment elite, the power elite, trying to undermine his popularity related to Venus and his financial status. Again, a Venus symbol. How is he handling this transit? Well, first, Trump in his natal chart, down here, he has Jupiter was stationary. It wasn't moving when he was born, which means it is very strong, and that gives him buoyant optimism. Second, throughout his life, he has recognized that he is somewhat eccentric or unorthodox in many ways. This is because he has Uranus emphasized in his chart. And this has probably forced him to learn to disregard the criticisms of others. And finally, in his natal chart, he has Mars on his ascendant. Here he has Mars right there. And so this has given him a very competitive spirit. So hitting back at his opponents is completely natural for him. And being a Gemini, Sun in Gemini, he can do this with a cutting, edgy, verbal skill. So in addition to those inherent, innate traits, Trump currently has Jupiter transiting opposite his Sun. Okay, here we have Jupiter down here. Here is his moon. He was born on a full moon. So we have a Jupiter transit to his natal moon opposite his Sun. So in the face of huge opposition from the press, from the intel community, he has retained his sense of confidence and faith. So Jupiter has really helped him through the last couple years. However, he does have an Achilles heel, and that is too much Jupiter, maybe too much Mars energies. Jupiter sometimes creates a sense of invincibility, too much confidence, and Mars transits often indicate when someone is becoming too combative. And because he has a strong Mars natally, he has this tendency. Again, I'm going to come back to these dates throughout this podcast. The key dates coming up, he has Mars transiting his Mercury on May 27th through the 30th, and then again it is transiting his ascendant during the last 2 weeks of August. Those are important dates for him and for the country. Why? Well, right now we have a lot of hot spots in the world, with China, with Iran, and so forth. Iran, Bolton, Trump, what key dates are upcoming? This was just out of USA Today. Trump says he doesn't want war with Iran. Is John Bolton driving the U.S. into a conflict anyway? And Bolton is Trump's national security advisor. So let's quickly look at Iran's astrology. And here we have Iran's chart in the middle. Again, the transits on the outside. We have Neptune transit in conjunct their ascendant. This is where Neptune is, 18 degrees. It's 150 to the ascendant. And actually, we have Saturn in transit down here, 150 to the ascendant. Okay. But the larger one is that we have, let's see, maybe I didn't, I'm thinking of something else. We have a brief one. We have Mars squaring the Sun at the end of May. But this is a very short transit. Iran doesn't have any Pluto transits. It doesn't have a major, strong Saturn transit occurring. Just the short Mars square Sun transit happening at the end of May. So that's sort of telling for me. Let's look at John Bolton's chart. He has Pluto transit squaring Venus. Here's Pluto squaring his Venus. He has a Saturn transit opposite his moon. Jupiter in conjunct moon. Now Bolton, I'm just not going to go into a lot of detail here, but he's a Scorpio. He's a Scorpio with Cancer moon. This is a person who has strong feelings, a tendency to be defensive, very protected, kind of armored in his psychology. His moon, he has a Neptune squaring his natal moon. So there is a tendency for this person to want to feel secure, but there's a very strong inclination to dip into areas of confusion and not see things clearly, to deceive himself, maybe to deceive other people. I have a bias against John Bolton. I think he tends to be sort of, too much of a globalist and leads too eager to lead the U.S. or to suggest the U.S. get into wars. So I see this in his chart. That's my bias. Currently, the Saturn transit opposite his moon is really exacerbating a sense of insecurity. And so that can manifest in many ways, but it can make him more defensive, make him feel like he needs to have more power in the world. So let's combine these things. At the end of May, Trump is going to be extra angry at someone. This might be either Iran, could be China, could be Bolton, could be all these. The mitigating factor for a war with Iran is that Iran only has a Mars transit happening right now. And that is their only major challenging aspect. And this only lasts a few days. Bolton's Saturn transit opposite his moon is a classic insecurity feeling transit, but also a rejection aspect in astrology. In addition, he has Pluto squaring Venus. He isn't feeling compatible with anyone, and his inherent defensiveness could end up getting him fired. It could also end up getting us into a war. The gold chart often rallies on geopolitical troubles. Its end of May astro energy dates possibly indicate that sparks could be flying internationally at that time. We hope, cooler heads prevail. So we have this end of May hot spot period, which I hope we get through without overt attacks taking place from either Iran or from the U.S. So that's it for today. I hope to be doing my podcasts on a weekly basis. Again, my name is Stephen. I have an art psychology background. I have a master's degree in psychology. I've studied astrology for over 40 years. I've applied it to financial markets for 25. For half that time, I was an active trader. And I always note that I'm basically a hard money cryptocurrency advocate. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing. And I do accept Bitcoin. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.